Okay, perfect. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining today's webinar with the partnership between Wavenet and Nviron. The focus of today's session is focusing on telephony within the Microsoft Teams platform. Just a few things to sort of start things off. Obviously, the session is recorded, just so everybody knows, and obviously there will be access to it later on if you do have to jump off. There is also a live Q&A tab. You can see that at sort of the top right hand corner of your screen. There's a question mark tab. Feel free to sort of drop questions in as and when, and we'll get to them as we can. And if it's relevant at the time, we'll sort of jump in and answer those questions for you. Before I kind of kick things off, I'm just going to actually hand things over to Sam from Nviron, just to sort of introduce himself, talk a little bit about Nviron, and then he'll pass things back to me. So over to yourself, Sam.
Thanks, Mike. Morning, guys. I'm Sam Halsey, new business manager at Nviron. Nviron is a UK-wide IT infrastructure specialist, and our core value is to build and maintain trust with customers, colleagues, and partners. This ethos has allowed us to grow over the last 30 years since our incorporation, keeping many customers over that time and building extremely close ties with the largest and most successful IT vendors in the world, actually. Although we work with all sectors in the UK, we have a keen focus on the education sector, and we understand how schools, colleges and universities work. We work closely with the IT teams to ultimately help improve the learning environment in those institutions. Nviron have worked with Wavenet for many years, and we ourselves employ the Wavenet unify technology in our back-end systems. Our service desk, despite its backup systems, is actually running the technology, and it's proven to be extremely robust. So over to you, Mike, to introduce yourself and talk about Wavenet and the unified technology.
Perfect, Sam. Thank you very much. All right, everyone. So just sort of cover off a few things. Firstly, just to introduce myself. So my name is Mike Korkidakis, and I'm the channel manager here at Wavenet. So my role within Wavenet is looking after our sort of key channel partners like Nviron, and partners that obviously actively sort of promote, resell, and use our core product. Just to cover off a few of the things in sort of like the agenda today, a lot of what we want to focus on and dive into in a bit of sort of live demo in real time is just some of the back-end Teams telephony functions of our TeamsLink product. Before doing that, I do just want to cover off a little bit of sort of background, a little bit, some information about Teams as an actual product, and then obviously a little bit about us. So I promise it won't be sort of death by slide, but I'm just going to run through a few things that I thought would be quite relevant to today's session. So firstly, a little bit about us in Wavenet. As Sam mentioned, we as an organisation have been working together for a significant amount of time. Both organisations have sort of 20+ years experience in their fields. For us, that knowledge and stuff purely comes from a lot of background in sort of the unified comms and voice networking and connectivity space. So that's where a lot of our sort of background comes from. I personally came from an organisation that was acquired by Wavenet back in January. An organisation called VIA, and VIA's key specialty was working in conjunction with Microsoft, developing alongside Microsoft for their sort of Skype for Business and Teams product. So my personal background is very much sort of more expertise in sort of the Microsoft space. I've been in the sort of the UCaaS world for about sort of the last 15 years across multiple countries, with the last couple of years specialising within the Microsoft space, everything from sort of communicator to Link to Skype for Business to where we are today with Teams. So our expertise kind of very much spans in that sort of unified comms, networking and connectivity space. Right, so just to cover off a few sort of things, it's always nice to sort of open up a bit of a session with, a Microsoft slide. So this kind of, slide, I think it encapsulates both the problem and the opportunity that people are dealing with within IT. This is very much that traditional approach to IT. And this is very much sort of where we are today, which is the sort of the security versus productivity dilemma. So what we have today is users needing the ability to work effectively, regardless of device they're using, regardless of location they're working from, regardless of the app they're using. Microsoft have recently quoted, in particular in the situation we're in today with COVID, that they've seen sort of 2 years of digital transformation in the last 2 months. So we've really seen that need for products like Teams massively accelerate, especially in the sort of the global situation that we're in currently. Just highlighting that fact, Teams is everywhere now. For the first time, Microsoft are not only just sort of, focusing on that business community, you're actually seeing Microsoft advertising their product in the consumer space. And that's a new thing. And you're seeing that portfolio of Teams as a product massively grow. Further to that, you're seeing, Teams is everywhere in the news now, isn't it? So you actually can see some of the highlights of all the various different sort of, just sort of news articles and clippings that we have there. And you're seeing things like, Teams has jumped 70% to 75 million daily active users. So, we've seen, again, don't want to keep referencing it, but the situation we're in now has just seen dramatic growth for the Teams in the Microsoft platform. We're here in China has had a 500% increase in Teams meetings, calls, and conferences since January 31st. So 12 million users were added in a week, bringing it up to 44 million. So just a huge growth trajectory for the Teams platform and investment from Microsoft. So a little bit about sort of, why Teams. So Teams combines all of these into a single centralized, combined and collaborative hub. At the core, this allows different generations to use their favorite communication and collaboration methods without providing different solutions for each one. So you do have in the Teams product that centralized hub. It's different than the previous products like Skype for Business, where it was purely, your voice, your video, your meetings, your IM chat. Teams collaborates every single other element, your Outlook, your SharePoint, your document storage, all of the elements that you need is just all combined into one single source platform. Just a little bit more about sort of, why Teams and what it is. So, as we all know, again, with sort of COVID, you've obviously seen sort of, Zoom meetings being pushed and, WebEx being pushed. Well, WebEx is well established in the corporate world, and at the end of the day, is primarily a video solution, as is Zoom. The difference between those products and Teams is a platform. So you'll see as we run through the session, it also includes things like, those document collaboration bits, the chat, the telephony, the apps, the calendar. It's important to note that for those products like WebEx and Zoom, you can actually get integration into your Teams client. So you can join these meetings from your Teams client. So it is that platform rather than just a video tool and a video and communication tool. So what are the things you do get? So what is Microsoft Teams? You obviously get persistent one-to-one and group chat. So Teams is a chat-based workspace that brings together chat, meetings, calling, and Office 365 all in one. So one of the big things that we focus on in sort of the UCaaS world is what we like to call a presence-based product, where you can see people's availability and determine the best way to communicate with them. Through Teams, you have that functionality. You obviously have the availability. You have the integration with Outlook. You have all those things and the status bar and the availability bar, so you can choose the most effective way to communicate with people and individuals in your organization, and that is absolutely key. So Microsoft Teams solves for the communication needs of any sort of diverse workforce. So you have things like persistent one-to-one group chat. Of course, you can host and do powerful online meetings like we're doing currently. This is obviously hosted in Microsoft's live event tool, which is part of Microsoft Teams. So you have that ability. Obviously, the bit we really want to focus on today, and the element that I'm going to walk you through shortly, is the ability for enterprise calling and voice. And I'll walk you through sort of how our product differs from the Microsoft Direct offering. And then, of course, built-in Office 365 apps and all your collaboration built into Teams. And of course, that is built with what you would expect from Microsoft enterprise-grade security and compliance. So what do you get? So again, all-in-one communication. So calling, chats. Oh, sorry, I've jumped ahead there. Back that up. So calling, chat, and meetings in a single app. built-in audio conferencing, and you can do your best work all in one suite. So this creates a full meeting solution with the addition of audio conferencing. You can give meeting attendees the flexibility to join meetings through Teams or by calling the dial-in number that is automatically included in every Teams meeting. So what I want to do next is to kind of jump into, the differences between sort of the TeamsLink product and just taking business voice directly with Microsoft, and basically sort of why we exist and why certain partners like Nviron choose to work with us in reference to the enterprise voice functionality. So first, sort of what is TeamsLink? So for anybody that's kind of on the call, sort of using Teams currently, there's, one of the biggest questions you get asked is, does that mean, is this like a bolt on into Teams? Is this something you're adding into Teams? Nothing changes in your Microsoft tenancy. That all stays the exact same. Your signing credentials stay the same. We're not like providing our own version of Teams. You are truly using Microsoft Teams. So you're signing into your Teams client as you normally would. We're enabling the call functionality, and a lot of the stuff that we do is more in the back end in terms of how you route calls and do all of that. So we are enabling the ability to take that internal collaboration that you have currently in Teams and enabling external voice calling from within your Microsoft Teams client securely and efficiently with our product. So that allows you to connect inbound and outbound calls directly through your Microsoft Teams product. Of course, as you would expect from us, like I said, a big difference with our product is we do obviously develop alongside Microsoft using Microsoft APIs, and of course, in the feature element using Microsoft approved solution, Microsoft certified hardware. We do offer a bit of a sort of, a unique sort of pricing structure and how we price the product up, and we do obviously have a little bit more of in the benefit side of sort of some of the global presence. I'm going to touch on that in just a moment. So just to cover things off first, so for anybody that doesn't know, Teams is available on all various different types of devices. The nice thing about Teams as well is it is available for every individual user. They can have what's called 8 instances of the application running at once. So any individual user can have Teams across, a laptop device, a mobile device. Maybe you actually want to use, a physical handset, what have you. You can obviously be signed into all those devices simultaneously. You can choose obviously your ringing allocation, and you can have obviously all those devices ring, and you can choose the most effective device that you want to answer from. So that, that's included on your desktops, your mobiles. There's a web-based browser. It is compatible with Mac devices, and of course on sort of iPhone and Android, as well as obviously some of the major sort of browsers that you would expect to see. In terms of devices, I like to just sort of include this slide because this just sort of highlights, Teams as a product, and again going back to that sort of platform, because it is that sort of platform-based product, and with all the elements that are included in it, you can really get individual and kind of tailor, the device-centric elements for specific users. So, remote workers might just physically want, a headset. You can get into obviously physical handsets should that be required. There's all different types of devices and headsets for, particular users when you're out and about, when you're at home. There's all elements, but of course, it very much extends to meeting room devices as well. I think one of the big things that's missed with sort of Teams-based deployments is how you can actually fully bring in all the benefits of Teams as a collaboration tool into that meeting room space as well. You can enable a room essentially to the exact same specs that you can a user. You can invite that room into meetings. You can use collaboration tools in those meeting rooms, and you can truly immerse that sort of collaborative experience across your meeting rooms as well. And of course, we can help you with that and understanding your requirements. Just moving on to sort of, what I said I wanted to highlight was sort of our TeamsLink product versus Microsoft directly. And again, just to reiterate, obviously, we're not making changes to your Microsoft tenancy. Everything we do is on the calling element, the direct routing element, and hosting your call space. And I'll move into the portal shortly to show you guys how that sort of works. So it's kind of just a bit sort of a basic starting point. Just going to run through some of these points just for everyone's knowledge sake. So again, I said we kind of tariff in a bit of a unique way, and we do offer obviously unlimited UK minutes versus sort of Microsoft's 1200 minutes in their base packages. We of course support number porting. We port your numbers into our platform. We do provide, obviously, UK DDIs. One of the big differences with our platform, though, is because we do specialize in that telephony space, we can actually provide international DDIs in 127 countries versus Microsoft's 12 at the moment. So we do have a very robust and redundant solution. We do have the proper relationships worldwide as well, that we can provide local DDIs in 127 countries and truly support that global landscape. Standard things that you would expect, ring groups are included in all the product in both products. Follow the sun routine. Standard stuff like audio attendance and music on hold are standard. Call queuing is available in both. Again, just highlighting some of our differences. Visual routing manager, which I'll walk everybody through in the portal shortly. We do offer advanced disaster recovery as well. So this is just going back to sort of how we build our solution and our expertise in the telephony space. So as an example, Microsoft in the UK solely rely on one major sort of tier one carrier. Appreciate, tier one carriers build very, very robust and redundant infrastructures. But as we've all seen over recent years, they do sometimes have outages. And if that outage does happen, then obviously there's a single point of failure there. With our solution, we obviously do have different data breakout points and different data backup points. But as importantly, using the UK as an example, we partner with major and multiple tier one carriers. So because the way we build our solution, we build what's called a multi-tenanted environment with aggregated SIP channels across our multi-tenanted environment. It means that we can choose how we want to route our traffic, who we want to route our traffic over, and we can obviously prepare things for not just redundancy, but obviously low cost routing as well. So what that means is, if we partner with, in the UK as an example, 7 major tier one networks for call traffic. If one of those fail, it means that we have the ability through our infrastructure to just route all the calls through any of the other tier one providers. So, there's one of the major tier one providers had quite a massive outage in November. People might know who I'm referring to, but when that happened, they were one of the providers we used, but our solution was not impacted whatsoever because we had the ability to just route that calls over different carriers. And that also gives us the advantage very much in the international space, because it means that we can choose low cost routing. That's one major difference. Microsoft's got a very, very set rate card for the international space, whereas we can get very much more granular, very much more bespoke for individuals because we have that expertise. We do obviously also have skill-based routing, which I'll take everybody through in a moment. Group voicemail, which is actually quite a massive one. You'd be surprised. So for anybody that doesn't know on the call, this is a bit of a concern for organizations that are deploying Microsoft Teams at the moment. If you do actually have a bunch of users in a ring group, that ring group, if you do have voicemail turned on, will terminate on an individual user's voicemail, and that causes obviously a few issues. We have the option for group voicemail where you can have all calls terminate to a group voicemail rather than an individual voicemail, so it can obviously give that more sort of corporate feel and enable to make sure that calls aren't missed as well. So obviously a group voicemail, everybody in that group gets the notification. Another big one for us, and quite a big differentiator, is we do have full MiFID II and FCA compliant call recording built into our solution. So again, Microsoft very much specialize in the platform. This is not something that Microsoft themselves wanted to specialize in. They actually leave this down to sort of partners like ourselves. But we do offer a fully compliant solution for call recording there. Now, our expertise in the VIA world very much was focused around this. We were the only organisation in the UK that could provide FCA and MiFID II compliant call recording through Skype for Business, and obviously we're transitioning that across to Teams. One of the big things to note there as well is I did mention before that we develop alongside Microsoft's APIs. So there's a lot of organizations out there that are providing Teams direct routing, but what you do find is some of them are only capturing the external PSTN activity. Because we develop alongside Microsoft's policy APIs, it means that we're not only capturing the external traffic, we're capturing the internal elements as well. So right now we are capturing things like your internal Teams to Teams calls, which allows us to actually put that, the criteria that we are that compliant solution. we're just waiting for the next update from the Microsoft policy APIs as well. In the Skype world, we're also capturing things like instant messages and document transfers. We're transitioning that across to the Teams space as well. So we're going to be able to offer that in Teams, hopefully by the end of the year. And then there's also things like supervisor wallboards and dashboards, which I'll cover off in just a moment. So that's what I want to do next, actually, is I just want to pull across our portal, just highlight a few of the sort of differences in our product versus the Microsoft Direct product, and just show people a little bit about sort of the product in real time. Obviously, of course, conscious of time, so I'll try and make this as quick as possible. So if you do have anything that you want, more detail on afterwards and stuff, we'll cover that off, and please do get in touch. I'm just going to pull across our portal. So what you're going to see here, and again, what I want to do when I walk through this is just highlight some of the big differences between sort of our portal and the elements of extracting information versus the Microsoft product. So what you're going to see here on the main sort of landing page of the product is simply things like, a call charges tab and the elements to sort of, view the operational health of the system. So this will give you a bit of a snapshot of activity, basic stuff, but most importantly, this will, in live and real time, it'll always let you know if there's any call charges for the organization. So you can keep really easy tabs on that. Which is obviously something you can't do directly with the Microsoft product. I did mention we have obviously a global presence as well. So what you'll see here is the ability to actually check any sort of past incidences in terms of report. You can subscribe to the updates, but you can also check the operational health of the system around the world as well in the different data points that we have. So we do have different access points in different parts of the world. Australia is a prime example of that. America is a prime example of that. So it means that, for that global presence, again, it means that we have breakout points in different parts of the world. If you were based in Australia, the last thing we'd want is your traffic routing back to the UK, out of the UK to make a local call within Australia. Now we have obviously different data pops around the world to prevent things like those latency issues. So you're not routing all the call traffic back to the UK for global and local calls. So just going through some of the quick sort of highlights of the portal. One of the nice things you can do in the portal, and this is a little bit more complex in the Microsoft space and the admin portal, is you can get a very, very quick snapshot of any sort of activity that's taken place in the organization. This just pulls up quick peer-to-peer activity. You can see obviously, date, time stamp, duration, who's made the call, who's received the call. Just gives you a really quick snapshot. A lot of organizations use this for, potentially HR purposes, GDPR compliance purposes. This is something that's a little bit complex and sometimes even requires some PowerShell scripting to export out of the Microsoft tenancy. So it just gives that really quick snapshot. And again, once the policy API gets updated, hopefully in August time, what we'll also have here is what we had in the Skype for Business world, which will have any document transfers and instant messages as well. So you just get a really quick snapshot of what's taken place in the organization. You can do the same for obviously conferences and export anything you want to various elements of data query. The setup tab is what holds a lot of the standard features and functionalities you'd expect to see out of a phone system, and a lot of this stuff is very, very key. Starting with things like obviously you can set a block callers tab, you can set dial policies for the organization. This is very, very easy and very, very quick to do, but a lot of organizations might want to do this. You can obviously restrict access to certain locations, which you can set via dial policy very, very simply. You also get obviously all your user access and security groups. So within the portal, you can obviously limit access to certain elements of the portal for certain users. As an example, that activity tab, you might not want everybody that has access to the portal to be able to see that. Now, one of the important things to note about the portal is the bits I'm showing you now are for very much the people that administer the phone and the telephony solution. Any of your end users, all they're ever going to see is just the Teams client with the call tab. So they'll have the ability to obviously control their calls from Teams. They're not going to see this element. This is very, very much for the people that administer the solution more in the back end. I mentioned previously that obviously Teams is what's called a presence-based product. So it means every user in the organization has a DDI. Through the Teams client, you can control your own DDI. You can, pair that with a mobile if you want. You can forward your calls to call groups. You can control all that in the Teams client. But what we do find is some organizations don't want every user presenting that DDI. So what you can do is you can mask the outbound CLI that's presented. So individual users can present certain CLIs. Maybe that's a main office number that you want them to present rather than the DDI. I mean, I myself do work in the UK and Australia. When I'm making calls in Australia, I present my Australian CLI. So you have the ability to control that very, very simply in the portal, which is very, very easy. You can control things like your voicemail. So like I said, you can set up group voicemail, and that's a key one for us. So you can set up and control that and manage that from the portal. You can control all your media as well. So any uploads for your IVRs, your audio attendants, you can simply upload these in the portal via a WAV or an MP3 file. So you have the ability to sort of manage all this and control all this yourself. Another key one is just the ability to create users. So you can create users in the portal very simplistically. So there's different ways to do this as well. So a lot of obviously organizations, if a new user starts, you're going to create them in your Office 365 tenancy. We do have an Active Directory sync, which means that can sync across to the portal as well at the same time, which would give you a drop-down menu for a user, or you simply just also can start to manually create a user. Really simplistically, put in their details, select the domain you want them assigned to, so you can manage multiple domains through the portal should you need to. You select the appropriate license for that user, you select a number out of your available amount of numbers, and then you can simply create a user, which means you can set a user to be able to dial out from Teams virtually instantly, especially if you're not using a physical handset or having to get waiting for a device to come in. It's as simple as that to create a user and get them started. But you can obviously set this to an Active Directory sync as well, should you need to. So that covers off some of the sort of the basic functionality. One of the big things that I mentioned previously is the sort of the visual call routing manager, and this is a really key difference to our portal versus how you set up this in the Microsoft tenancy. So if I click on call routes, what I'm going to start with is just pulling up sort of a demo call route. What this shows you is just how visual and how easy it is for people in an organization to not only make sense of this, but also to create these and do them themselves. So even the most sort of untechnical of people can get an understanding that if somebody calls this number, if they call, let's say in hours, so you can set your time condition. This particular time condition is set, Monday to Friday, 7 till 6. It means that calls then hit this, which is your main menu IVR. Press 1 for, obviously in this case it's sales, press 2 for support. When you press 2 for support, that hits another IVR, 1 for standard support, 2 for provisioning, 3 for porting. So you can obviously see how all your calls route and how you can set this up and how visual and easy it is to manage. And this is a key differentiator. So if I go into actually how you do this, it's as simple as going into setup, going to create a call route. Obviously, I've got no DDIs available because it's a demo one. But if I actually, obviously, what this would pull up is your range of DDIs for the organization. You'd select one, and then it is just simply a click-through process. So you can start by adding, like I said, that time condition as an example. And this is where you can also do, templates for specific holidays. A lot of our customers really like this for disaster recovery as well, because it means you can set disaster recovery templates that you just have to engage if that situation, enables it. If an office needs to be evacuated, the situation we're in currently, any of our customers were very, very easily able to sort of, make those changes, route calls to people at home. All of that could be done really simplistically from the portal and very, very easy and very, very visual. So none of our customers were impacted by that. So you can set your time conditions and you can set various templates. You can add obviously your IVRs, your announcements, the things that you want to add, terminate calls to voicemail, but you can also add, and this is some of the key differentiators, is we have ring groups and call queues. So Microsoft also has ring groups in their product. A ring group is simply you select the time and the time that you want something to ring for, be it 20 seconds. You add users to the group that you want. As an example, if I had like a sales ring group as an example, this just means that for 20 seconds, it rings all these users at the same time. The first person to pick that up connects the call. Simple as that. And that's what Microsoft offer, and that's what exists in their product. We do have the element of what's called skill-based routing in our product as well, which means you can also set what's called the call queue, meaning that you can rank your agents from 0 to 100. Obviously, the higher the ranking, the more skilled the agent. It means that calls route to those users first and then sequentially downwards. We also have what's called the smart agent selection built in there. So if you do have things like a whole bunch of agents on the same skill level as an example, it brings to the person that's been most idle the longest. So it's just, basic sort of contact center functionality. But for a lot of organizations, I mean, Nviron as a classic example for their service desk, they of course use this, you know what I mean? So where someone calls in and has a specific requirement, obviously depending on what their IVR says, it'll route to, the person that's most relevant to take and handle that call. It allows you that capability and that flexibility in the product to be able to sort of, be smart about how you route your call traffic. And that's a very, very key differentiator to our product. Within that as well, you also have things that you would expect to see out of the product. So you can run all various different types of reports, as well as obviously more detailed reports in the contact center piece. So this is where you can run things like, queue summaries and agent summaries, how long the wait time was for a specific call. All those elements are built in, as well as having things like a supervisor dashboard. The supervisor dashboards can be cycled for specific queues, for specific users. You can see all that here, but this just gives you a view. If you want to limit and sort of manage some, basic contact center functionality, you can do that with the product. So you can see obviously the amount of agents you have available as a supervisor. You can do things like set people busy, stop their break, or log them out. You can see all the calls coming in. So if a call came into this particular supervisor dashboard now, if it's in sales, I would see that in live real time. I could see the agent that it goes to. I could watch all that stuff connect, as well as being able to obviously set some specific KPIs and some specific elements here within the admin tab. But it gives me that capability to be able to sort of manage the agents and the particular queues. And again, in the situation we're in now, that means that these people could have done this from home and still watch the activity of their agents, as well as have the ability to completely report on them. So you can run obviously specific reports on specific agents and specific users. You can do all of that within the product here. So you can cycle the specific queues that you want, you can cycle the specific date ranges that you want and end dates, and you can pull up those reports very simplistically, not just for specific agents, but also for specific queues and specific call summaries. We do also have things like live and active wallboards. You can set the KPIs for these, how you want to see them, but this is just basic stuff that you can see within the Teams environment that you can't get with Microsoft directly. We do also have things like CRM integration and of course call recording, like I mentioned as well. So we integrate with most of the major sort of CRMs, anything sort of cloud-based with an open API we can integrate with. And what that means is that we can obviously pull the content records from your CRM. So for anybody that's used Teams, you know that when a call's coming in, that call kind of pops in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. But what we can also do with the CRM integration piece is obviously we pull the content records that you're storing within that CRM. So if a particular client's calling in that you have a record for, it'll actually pop the detail of that user that's calling in. And this is stuff that's just built in natively to the product. There might be some people on the call that are saying that they might need more advanced contact center features and stuff like that. Remember, Teams is an endpoint, so we can obviously integrate with more advanced contact centers. We provide more advanced contact centers, but this is the stuff that's just natively built into the Teams product, and things that at the same price point as Microsoft directly you get with us. And just obviously a lot more feature set built in. So you're not paying more for these sorts of features and functionality. You're paying exactly in line with sort of the Microsoft-based product, but we're just giving you all these additional advantages built in. And of course, call recording. So call recording does exist in here, and it has all the elements that you'd expect to see. You can copy the URL, you can export the recording, you can do all of that with the call recording element as well. So it's all there and built in for you. And of course, this is just all built in a very simplistic, easy to use and easy to manage portal, which is really exactly what we're after here. So that's the portal there. Like I said, just conscious of time, so just kind of breezing through some of this stuff. Just kind of going back to some of the slides. the nice thing about Teams, but the nice thing about our sort of back end portal as well is, like I've mentioned before, we're kind of developing alongside Microsoft. What you're seeing from Teams and from Microsoft is constant innovation. So they're constantly making changes. Even some of the recent changes, things like live captions and subtitles, great for the education sector, as an example. So, for those situations where, you'll go into a mass audience and those sorts of things, it's all live, and you can caption, you can subtitle thing. They've obviously increased the custom background, and that's about to come out further. Things like pop-out chat. There's constant innovation from not just Microsoft, but then from us. That portal that you saw, we own, and we've developed that portal ourselves, and that's come over obviously the years of transition, and from things like Link to Skype for Business to Teams. We're constantly evolving that product in line with Microsoft. We have a team of developers on staff that are constantly just making changes and developments to that portal. So we're constantly, when you're deploying Teams and when you're deploying the telephony elements with us, it's just constantly up to date and a very, very advanced solution. What you have seen very, very quickly as well, and this sort of highlights some really interesting sort of stats, is obviously since March, since sort of lockdown has happened, these are the things that you've seen come straight out from Microsoft really, really quickly. Things like custom backgrounds, 3x3 window panes, live captions. You can raise hands in meetings now as well when you're hosting a meeting. We obviously have things like compliance-based recording for calls, chat, meetings, file sharing, all those things. Yammer and Teams integrations. So there's multi-window chats, and of course business voice. So you've seen a lot of this stuff come really, really quickly. This is only kind of 3 months of transition. So you can see that the roadmap for Teams has really, really accelerated and really, really moved quickly, which is really good. Sort of just kind of moving on to sort of like wrapping things up. Of course, I did mention that you can kind of follow up with us. You can get in touch with Sam and myself. But also we did want to there is an offer happening for anybody that's attended the webinar at the moment. Of course, if you want to obviously look at, try on the product, please get in touch with us. But for any sort of attendees that do actually sign up for the product before the 31st of August, we are offering 2 months free with a 12-month contract, or 3 months free and no setup charge on a 36-month term. Like I said, if you need to trial the product first, we're more than happy to support that. We're really keen on, once we do find, especially people that are using Teams for internal collaboration, once we actually get you onto the platform, you're seeing a lot of advantages. So we're quite confident that once you're on it, you'll stay on it. So I think that's just that's kind of wrapping things up from me. I'm just going to pass back to Sam just to see if there are any questions. So yeah, I'll just pass back. I'm not sure if there's any questions come about, Sam, but I'll just pass back to you if there are.
Yeah, no problem. There's none so far, I don't think. So if anyone does have any questions, please pop them in the chat link. I don't think there's any so far.
Okay, perfect. We'll just give it a minute, I suppose, and then if there isn't, like we did say, obviously I'll just pop that tab. Let me just pop up that our contact details. So if anybody wants to make note of those, that is Sam and myself there. Obviously, you can see our sort of email addresses. So feel free to sort of jot those down and get in touch with us post this. We've got a few questions coming in. Okay, just going through some of these questions. So are we part of the Microsoft Compliance recording program? Yes, we are. So we use, so the platform that we use and that we host in our own data centers is actually Verint. They're one of Microsoft's key partners in developing that the compliance-based program. It's not something that we've written ourselves, but we host that and integrate that into our solution. And of course, it's a completely Microsoft certified, and obviously they're one of Microsoft's key compliance partners, and that's hosted in our environment. So yeah. In terms of what are the costs of a contract for a school, obviously we'd have to get a little bit more detail there, but I mean, in terms of obviously how pricing works, so the phone system license you acquire from Microsoft. We just obviously provide the calling plans. Microsoft obviously give the education discount there. so there's that cost, and we obviously could work with you on what the costings are, and then we're in line with sort of Microsoft's calling plans and pricing. Normally for education we work out slightly cheaper than with Microsoft Direct, but just obviously with a bit more of a feature set. But in terms of the actual cost, obviously we'd have to break it down and understand a little bit more about your organization, look at things like what we're reporting in and those sorts of things. So by all means, feel free to get in touch with Sam after this, and we can actually look at pricing that out for you if that helps.
Absolutely. Yeah, so Steve's obviously known to us very well, so I'll give you a call, Steve, later on if that suits. We can catch up and discuss.
Perfect. Does that I think that covers all the questions.
There was one more, but it may be repeated. Let's have a look. So are they certified ready? It's come through from Anonymous.
I imagine that's in relation to the compliance recording. Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
Would you assume that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, well, like I said, Verint are one of Microsoft's key partners for that. So Microsoft are launching a certification program for call recording, but nobody's officially certified in that currently. But it's a Microsoft certified product and platform. So yeah, I mean, there's specific certifications that Microsoft always launch for their products. And once that certification program is actually released, then yeah, Verint will likely be on that as well.
Fantastic. I think that's it for the questions.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that wraps it up. If there are any other further questions, guys, like I said, please feel free to get in touch with us. And yeah, and thank you very much, everybody, for joining today. And this recording will be made available post the call. So thank you very much, everybody. Look forward to the next one. Thank you.
Cheers, Mike. Thanks, guys.